The human mind is a fascinating thing. This 3-pound organ is responsible for what makes us, well, us. It is what gives us our personality, our likes and dislikes, what we find funny, and what will make us scared. The speed at which we process sounds, smells, and sights is fascinating, and how we interpret thoughts on them at almost the exact same time is something that we all take for granted, because our brains are always working. We as a species also have developed a love for testing out our brain in different ways to see how it reacts with other things, and in turn, how we can learn more about ourselves. This has been seen in forms of music, films, books, and various types of testing. As we learned more about the brain and how it works, numerous different people created studies to see how we can interpret something and relate those things to ourselves. Studies in psychology have shown this time and time again, but one of the lesser talked about tests is that of the Szondi Test, which was a personality test created in 1935 by Hungarian psychiatrist Leopold Szondi. In today's video, I am going to ask each of you to simply sit back, watch this video, and be honest with yourself. With the research that I have done with this, it is one of the most interesting things I've ever actually come across. And after doing it myself and giving it to several family members and friends with creepy accuracy, I knew I had to make a video on it and see if those same effects resonated with all of you. So, pay attention because you're about to take the Szondi Test. To give a little background information on the test before we start, it was created to categorize and study 8 different drive needs. Drive needs are the product of drive theory. That is an attempt to understand, analyze, and classify psychological drives. These drives are defined as an instinctual need that we as humans have, that have the power of driving us to a certain behavior. The entire theory is based on the idea that when we are born, we have a certain set of needs, and when those needs are not met, a negative tension is created, which in turn drives us to fulfill those needs. For example, if a person was shown little or no attention as a child, then as they grow up, they will tend to have attention-seeking traits to fulfill those needs. This, mind you, is a very broad example of how all of this works, and I am in no means an expert in psychology, just a curious person who wants to learn more. In a way, finding my own drive. The Szondi Test focuses on 8 different drives. Those being the H drive, which is also known as love, the sadist drive, the E drive, which is also known as anger, the hysteric drive, the catatonic drive, the paranoid drive, the depressive drive, and the manic drive. These 8 were chosen as they are present in every living human, but they all differ in proportion with each person. The test then comes into action at this point by giving those taking the test the correct answer actually from the start, as only they are the ones who know the outcome actually seconds after the test begins. And in my experience with this, it is pretty accurate. As of the 8 pictures that you will soon see, one of them is going to stand out to you almost immediately. And this is your brain sending you a message. A better way to understand how Szondi backed this test up was by claiming that we all have things that we are insecure about, and it is normal human behavior to mask those insecurities from other people, as it is to many the biggest sign of vulnerability, and we as humans are seemingly wired to not show those vulnerabilities. One last thing that I do need to mention before starting this test are the words repression and denial. Repression is essentially a defense mechanism our brains are capable of when a memory or a situation triggers an emotional response from an individual. It is our brain's way of trying to protect us from something that makes us sad, upset, or angry. So, for example, if someone grew up in a house where it was seen as a weakness to cry, then as that person grew into adulthood, they would actually repress the urge to cry as it would still be seen as a sign of weakness to them. Denial, on the other hand, is flat out refusing to believe something. even if the truth or proof is laid out in front of them. It is basically a stricter defense mechanism that the brain has learned over the years. An example of this would be if a person who knows they are extremely aggressive and can lash out at any moment may put on a facade that they are calm and relaxed all the time, to lie to themselves that they are not angry. But those are just examples of what repression and denial are, so you have a better understanding going forward. But enough of me talking backstory. I know most of you are probably eager to get to the test, so let's begin. I want each of you to examine these 8 pictures. By now, you have no doubt pinpointed one in particular, but keep looking at them and put yourself in this scenario. Out of these 8 people, which person would you least want to be alone in a room with? Perhaps their appearance scares you. Maybe it is something about their expression that is triggering a flight response in you. Or maybe something about them is making you extremely uncomfortable. I'll give you all some time to really take them in. Now, do you have your number selected? These 8 pictures were actually all patients of Szondi, all suffering from a type of mental illness. Now, this is not me saying that you have a mental illness. It is just information that is relevant to this test. Szondi believed we all have personality traits that we all suppress and are extremely sensitive about, to the point that with some people, even those closest to them have no idea about these feelings. With that goes into the number that you picked, that it reveals those traits you have, which you try to hide or deny the most. The reason for why a person would hide those are numerous and very private. The overall feedback from this test, from both my personal experience and from what I have read, are pretty accurate. But do not take these results fully to heart, as there is no concrete proof on this test. The mind is a tricky thing, and we are all still studying it to this day. So, now for the explanation of each number. For those of you who picked number 1, the sadist. Repression. You likely have repressed the need or desire to dominate others, due to having issues with controlling figures as a child or young teenager. You also tend to have strongly repressed thoughts or desires to see people suffer emotionally or physically. Denial. You are by default a very peaceful and safe person, and a friend to many. You tend to create very close bonds with many of them as well. Yet, you never want to feel like anyone is controlling you. So, you tend to create barriers when you do not want to do something. You may do this by means of being passive-aggressive or outright defiant, as a means to frustrate and eventually exhaust those who create issues for you. For those who picked number 2, the epileptic. Repression. You tend to repress emotions and let them build up, until eventually they become too much and you explode in anger and sadness. You may have strong feelings of anger, impulsiveness, and irritability. The reason for this behavior is that early in your childhood, you may have been told that having these feelings was not okay and was a bad thing. Denial. You want to avoid feeling those outbursts of anger, so you tend to have a very friendly and calming disposition. You are seen as kind and reliable by your friends and family. However, this self-control you practice tends to fall under pressure, and you have a tendency at those points to lash out at others. For those who picked number 3, the catatonic. Repression. You tend to spend more time in your own thoughts than anything else, so much so that it may alter your own view on reality during times of struggle or depression. You may have been lectured or told that you were not present enough by people, and that you were not worried of your own emotional or physical needs. Denial. Attempting to avoid losing touch with reality, you are very strict with yourself and have a set of rules that you do not change or alter for anyone. You as well tend to follow rules to the letter and possess a high degree of intelligence. You, however, hate change and need things to be concrete instead of spontaneous. For those who picked number 4, the schizophrenic. Repression. You tend to isolate yourself from people and repress apathy for others. You may feel paranoid more often than others around you, and you have a tough time relating to other people. Because of this, you actually prefer being alone. Denial. You tend to have a lot of friends and have a constant need to be around people, whether it be spending time with them or communicating with them frequently on the phone. Your friendliness may actually be a mask for the lonely feeling that you tend to have, and you find that your relationships with people tend to lack any real substance. For those who picked number 5, the hysteric. Repression. You find yourself repressing attention-seeking tendencies. You were likely an only child, and due to your parents giving you the sole attention, you may desire that strongly in your adult years. You may have been told by people that you are shallow and have unstable emotions with various things. You also find yourself having a very strong desire for approval. Denial. You are modest and try not to stand out, yet you find yourself attracted to people who are the opposite and are the center of attention. You have been told that you are a charmer, and deep down you know that in fact you are. You value attention to detail and care a lot about your physical appearance. For those who picked number 6, the depressive. Repression. You find yourself feeling depression more frequently than others, to a point where you feel comfortable and normal in your own depression. You have strong feelings of self-loathing, guilt, and worthlessness. Denial. You may show a friendly and outgoing side, but internally you are feeling very alone and empty. You may also have issues with your own self-esteem and value. You also have a tough time trusting other people. You tend to avoid these thoughts and feelings by burying yourself in relationships or work. For those who picked number 7, the manic. Repression. You tend to repress feelings of hyperactivity and obsessive habits. You tend to struggle with your emotions on a daily basis, which results in very compulsive habits or fixations. Denial. On the outside, you are very logical, controlled, and restrained. You find comfort and peace in balance and even numbers, symmetry, and so on. You hate chaos, loud music, and overly emotional people. For those who picked number 8, the dissociative identity disorder. Repression. You may be having fears of accepting your sexuality or gender identity. As a child, you may have been bullied or harassed by a parent, teacher, or a family member that made you feel that you wouldn't be accepted by society or a member of the opposite sex. Denial. You feel a need to express your sexuality either by being extremely masculine or feminine. You will have a strong showing of confidence and control on the outside, but on the inside, you are having a great deal of struggle with these emotions. So, how did you do? Was the test accurate at all, or 100% incorrect? This was something I thought would be interesting for a lot of you, since these types of tests that can guess things about ourselves we don't always make apparent are always popular with crowds and parties. As I said, this is in no way telling you that you have any kind of mental illness, nor should you take any of this as any kind of proof that you may have one. This is simply a test that is based off numerous varying factors, and some psychiatrists have deemed this test to be a failure, whereas others have agreed with its popularity and accuracy. Again, take all of these results with a grain of salt, and if you did feel that your results were accurate and you have been struggling to deal with those feelings, consider using the coping methods I included with them. None of these results are anything at all to be ashamed of. And I ask that everyone please continue to be respectful in the comments, as you always are. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I of course will see you all next week for another one. Until then, however, remember to obliterate that subscribe button and break that like button. Stay safe out there, friends. Good night.